Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't pause too long.
No comments.
No comment. Did
No
we do
comments.
it right? No.
We all pause. It's just natural. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton.
Here.
Mrs. Boer.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Swager.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Notice of the meeting.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district's business, and it is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting, as indicated in the agenda. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Upon request of the superintendent, the school district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. And we keep a recording of each of these meetings to serve as administrative aid and to serve as a public documentation of the meeting.
Going to the additions or deletions to the agenda.
Yeah, I have a few changes. I believe some of the board members have asked for an executive session. So as we get in early in the agenda, would you like to do that after
Presentations. Yeah,
Okay.
before discussion. That way we
Okay.
can keep the folks for a presentation moving.
So I would add then our board resolution to adopt this is 2305-066. So I would add 2305-66A as a motion for the board to go into executive session after presentation. And then under the consent resolution, which is 23-05-066, it is on page 10, I believe, if the pagina is correctly on your agenda. We had a TBD on the boys varsity basketball head coach, and I'd like to insert Kyle Higgins into that position, and Mr. Higgins is here tonight to meet the board. I think that's all we have for changes to the agenda.
Okay. If I can get a motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Session.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just added
I
it.
was reading.
Oh, you know, and I
Added
should
right after the
Right.
presentation.
I should have said it's for personnel, appointment.
No
that will
problem.
run.
No other discussion for me.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Public remarks.
There were none.
All right. Presentation, 5-year forecast.
So this is actually on the board's agenda tonight to be approved. And the really nice thing about it is that after last Tuesday, we no longer have down here at the bottom new levies. They are all included up here now. So our forecast has been finalized, and knowing that makes it much easier to actually forecast. So you can see now that previously where the property tax was dropping, as the levy rolled off, it is now steady and increasing slightly with projected growth in value. Income tax, same. It was decreasing pretty significantly throughout the forecast. It is now back to growing at an expected rate of about 4% per year, which would include growth in wages and potential growth in enrollment or growth in residents. And the only other thing that has changed is, as we've been able to finalize some of our hiring decisions, actually knowing those numbers instead of estimating those numbers has made it much more accurate forecast as well. So now with the levies having passed and knowing our cash balance at the end of 5 years is projected to be about 4.8 million.
I think everyone's had a chance to review this on our side. Any questions from anyone? Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Our next presentation is with Andrew Beers, and he's here to talk about the Media Arts program. And I believe he has, well, I know he has a PowerPoint to share, and it's animated, so it's kind of good to see what he has to put up there.
Hello. Thank you all for letting me talk to you today. I'm Andrew Beers, and I teach the media arts classes at the middle school and the high school. At the high school, I currently teach film production and art media. Art media is a photography-based. At the middle school, I teach digital arts and media arts and communication. Also, I'm the advisor at the high school for the AV Club. The AV Club is a video and photo production club that meets weekly to create content for the Johnstown-Monroe community. These are some highlights from the middle school projects this year. I wish I could share all of them, but just give you a cross-section here. A major highlight was the Future of Johnstown poster project, where students imagined a future for their home in 10, 50, or hundreds of years from now. We got some skyscrapers. So if you guys see skyscrapers in 30 years, my students called it first. And a huge project was the hand-drawn animation project, where students combined the elements and principles of design with digital animation software. And you can see some of those looping at the top left. We got Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. There's dozens of really great animations I wish I could show you. Some highlights from the high school. Major project was the Posterity project. I called it Posterity. Students were photographing and documenting the Johnstown and the surrounding areas in order to preserve this place in the way it looks now for generations to come. We also did some research based on what photographs looked like from the 1920s to now in Johnstown and sort of compared those with now. And hopefully we'll be comparing our photographs now with 30 years from now when we got all those skyscrapers. Also, there were many projects in film production that allowed students to experiment with cinematography, film editing, and allowed them to create films in many genres, like horror, action, comedy, avant-garde stuff, and even documentary. So these at the top are examples of the Posterity project. I'm sure you guys all can recognize the massive cranes at the Intel site. Just really looking around the area and seeing how we can preserve what it looks like now, not positive or negative, just to look forward into the future. Okay, this was a really exciting year for the AV Club. Like I mentioned, the AV Club does photo and video projects for the community. We filmed, broadcast, and ran live replays for football, soccer, Big Red Band, lacrosse, and track events this year. If you saw replays on the Champions scoreboard during a home game, that was the AV Club. Also, we worked with Lieutenant Schwab from the Monroe Township Fire Department to produce photographs and videos for their 2023 New Hire Academy. The videos that we produced at the AV Club were shown at the New Hire graduation ceremony that was held in the PAC, I think in February, something like that, early this year. This is a silent sort of clip from one of the videos we made for the fire department. So we got to go where they were training. We got to watch them actually respond to some calls. And this was a blast. Students had a lot of fun working really closely with these firefighters and seeing what they do. I have this whole video is pretty long, so I didn't want to show the whole thing, but if anyone is curious, I can absolutely send a link your way. That would be my pleasure. Here's just these guys who I really enjoy spending time with. My AV Club. These are the ones putting the images on the scoreboard during football games and things like that. So if you've enjoyed the scoreboard, you have these kids to thank. Looking forward, next year we're implementing a media arts career pathway in the high school. So students will take a media arts pathway primer first, and then 4 of the subsequent pathway classes in order to receive credit towards a related program at COTC or OSU Newark. Next year's classes at the high school will include video broadcast and digital image editing. I'm really excited for both of those. I just want to do some student highlights. This is highlighting one of my students, Matt Durbin, who's a junior in the AV Club this year. These three videos, the first, well, the top left is Mr. Malloy, our teacher of the year last year, Mrs. Spade, JHS English 11 teacher, and Alex Colley, our current senior vice president. Matt's taken great initiative to get these interviews done. He's trying to get Mr. Busenberg, but we'll see. He's very busy right now. And these interviews are going to be a critical part of our plan to run a weekly news program next year. That's our goal for next year, is to get weekly news program running. Another student I would love to highlight is Logan Fluer, who's actually here with us today, right here. He's a junior as well in the AV club. His photographs of Johnstown athletes have been shared countlessly on the internet, been published in print media, and have even earned him some money. Logan plans to continue his passion for photography and image making and in Ohio University's photojournalism BFA program when he graduates here, after he graduates here next year. So if you have any questions about Logan, about his photographic journey, he's here for you as well. Thank you. This has been a quick sort of summary of what we've been up to the past couple of years and implementations we're putting forward. I'm really excited for this program moving forward.
Thank you.
Sorry, before we go into executive session, which is our next resolution, can I highlight under presentations one of our retiring staff members who happens to be here tonight? We accepted her resignation.
We
in the
did?
past for retirement, but
We didn't accept.
No.
Didn't,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
we're not,
not yet.
not yet.
Yes, that'd be, yes.
well, I wanted to share a couple of things about Debbie, and for me, it was interesting to see about how her history started. And she, like many, started as a substitute. I understand you were a substitute aide, right? And you kind of got the bug and got recruited, right? So that was way back in, I think, 2000. Is that right? Okay. And then that was at that time, Searfoss Elementary. Then she went on and was a middle school library aide from 2000 to 2008. And then from 2008 to present, she's been the middle school secretary. And I have to say, I've worked with Debbie for just a year, but she's one of those people you meet, you feel like you've known for a very long time. And she certainly, being new to the district, made me feel very welcome. And we found out we have a passion for old cars. And I don't know if I drive as fast as you, but it's okay. Well, she doesn't like the fact that I have a different car manufacturer than she does. She's
You
kind
don't
of
drive a Charger?
no, she's a Chrysler person. I have a classic. Anyways, that's the type of person Debbie is, and I know Chris always has wonderful things to say about her. So, you know, it's hard to encapsulate so many years of service to the community and to the students and to the staff, but we wanted to say a couple of things about it. Anything you want to say to the group here? But I was going to say, if you're so grateful, you know, there's opportunities for substituting in the fall. Yeah. Chris, you got to do it now while it's still fresh. We'll get her to sign a
Yeah, sign the
subcontract for
contract.
next year.
Just slip it over right now.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
Except for the days you're subbing. Except for the days you're subbing here. Yeah, mark those on.
Yeah, thank you. I saw you quite often, as you know, so.
You are appreciated, Debbie.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I don't think Jackie Cannon is here tonight. Is she? No, we'll get her at another time. We'll try to get her at a board meeting. I thought she might come tonight, but I know you've already accepted her resignation. But we are working to get her under contract for next year. So we're a little more successful, but we're still working on Debbie Hayes.
You're never out.
Yeah.
You're never out.
So that's all we have.
So I'll put that out there.
Okay. Well, that's all we have, our presentations, and then we have executive session. So can we read the resolution?
Yep.
So it's resolution 23-05-66A, and it is a resolution for consideration of appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. And then we'll be back at.
Can I get a motion?
I'll second.
Oh, one more introduction?
We got another.
Oh, nothing.
I was going to do her in personnel, but that's okay. That's right. We were going to get her in person because we have her later on in personal. But that's, why don't you get your first and second?
I second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Maybe we could just sneak it in. So Haley's here. I think you were going to introduce. You want to introduce Haley now? Is that okay? Okay. Sorry, we'll sneak that one in too. Haley was already hired, so she's not on the board resolution.
Correct.
But
She was approved at the work session, and so we wanted to bring Haley tonight. Haley started as a student teacher with us in the fall, second grade. So she has been with us nearly all of the school year. And then with the vacancy created at kindergarten by a resignation, she came on as a long-term sub with us in late February, March, and has been in kindergarten ever since March with us. And then next year we'll be taking one of the open kindergarten positions that you approved at the last work session. So Haley is local to Licking County, grew up here, and went to Ohio State, and just graduated this past weekend, and has been very busy finishing classes, subbing for us, and ready to start her career in Johnstown. So we welcome her.
Let's welcome aboard.
now I think we're ready for executive session.
5:23?
right, welcome back.
Yours did.
We ready? Okay. On the agenda tonight, we had talked about, we're going to add one change with basketball for Kyle. I also want to call the board's attention to N for administrative employment, and we have Director of Administrative Services, TBD. We're going to change that, if the board agrees, to Director of Operations will be the title, and that I would like to recommend Derek Busenberg for that position. So again, that's under N, under consent.
All right. And do we have to take a motion to vote on amending that or just amend it?
I think you better take, yeah, we better do a
To a motion.
motion.
Can I get a motion to amend?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, wait, so that'll be 66B. Okay, so first we have to motion to amend, right?
Yep.
Okay. Amend, I'm sorry.
Yep, motion to amend, if I can get the roll call on that, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
now you can go through your
Okay,
consent.
all right, so we'll get that. I think we need to do board committees real quick is where we left off. Is that right? And I know we had quite a few board committee meetings, so I do appreciate the board in giving us a lot of this time in the recent meetings. I think Mrs. Brewer is going to cover us for buildings and grounds.
Yes, it's exciting to have all these committee meetings and remember what we talked about, but I'm going to hit the highlights because we're running a little late. We're certainly dealing with safety issues, and we're looking at grant monies to augment our radios, the Kenwood radios. I'm not sure how much that amount would be. Debbie, we got a number on that? Less than 20,000? Okay. And also we had Alice training a few years ago, which everybody seemed to really find it very educational and productive. We're looking at something comparable to that. It may not be Alice, but at least something like that. The other item that's come to our attention, more and more people are asking, organizations are asking to have time and space in our schools, maybe wanting a couple classrooms in the common areas, the gym, the whatever. That's something we have to give it a lot of thought, because how do you say yes to one and no to another and whatever, and they're all good people. So we're going to have to spend some time evaluating each of those projects. We talked about the board office, which we know and love so much. It's been with us for many years, and we know it could use a little facelift. But we're talking about whether we can do something temporarily or permanently. Temporary seems to be maybe the better choice right now, but we haven't come up with that conclusion. But stay tuned. I would bet by the next board meeting we'll have something in mind, because we have been batting some ideas, and it'll definitely take us through the next couple of years maybe, and we're excited about that. So that's forthcoming. The General Miles room now has new glass in all the showcases, and we're ready to put the items in there. We have a couple stumbling blocks. One is we're hoping that the people who currently have possession of Miles Estate items will be letting us have those on loan for the display in the museum. And also we have some things that we currently could put in there that are just waiting to be picked up. But we have to gather those together. They're in boxes, and then we have a group together that wants to display those. So it's exciting, and we're just real thrilled to be able to do that, to present a tribute to General Miles. It's long overdue. If you haven't been back in the area where there's been some reclamation of dirt that has provided more space for softball, baseball, and safety access to some of our extracurriculars, please take a walk back there. We've been the recipient of a lot of good accommodations for dirt and leveling, and a lot of people have come together to give a lot of time to make that space back there just really special. Can't announce exactly what's going to be there yet because they're still working and there's still dirt coming. So watch the dump trucks as they come back and make us even more, provide even better possibilities for our athletic and our band and whomever uses that back there. We talked a bit about the fencing and so forth at the parking area right above the school here, above the buildings. And just passed by that because it's still a question of which kind of fencing do you want and what do the neighbors want. So we're just listening. And that's about all I had. But it was a good meeting and we covered a lot of area. And it's exciting to see where we're going to go in the next couple of months. Any questions on the Browns and maintenance? I see some chatter in the back of the room. Okay. What would you like it to do? Which mic would you like me to use?
That one's not.
That one doesn't seem
That
to
one's not working.
be.
That's why.
Okay. We'll do better. How's this? Is that better? Oh, we're getting interference. I'm
That's
sorry.
better. It's closer.
Okay. Well, we'll go on to the next subject, which is communications committee. And we had a wonderful communications meeting. And we continue to have a host of topics because Dr. Wagner never runs out of ideas, and the committee seems to be pretty verbose too. They don't run out of ideas. So we're looking at a lot of possibility thinking. And one of the main issues that we've been discussing is it time for our Johnny to take on a new image? Should he continue to look the same way he's looked since, I'm not sure what year, if anybody knows, call in. It's a call, Jim, you might know. But Johnny has looked the same way, and maybe he needs a little bit of a redo. So stay tuned. We're going to have some imaging on the Johnny very soon. Also, the branding committee has been looking at consultants and artists to boost our image a bit as a school. Some things like our stationery and other items that we've been using for years need a little evaluation, and how do we want to present our image in the next few years to come. The website is about ready to be launched. Craig is working. I think you're leading that, aren't you, Craig? Can I say that?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Craig is leading that, and he's doing a great job, and I love his short clip videos. And he was boasting the other day that the Grandparents' Day video is it still number 2 or is it number 1? Number 2. Number 1 is Brutus Buckeye. We've been booted by Brutus Buckeye. So all you grandparents out there, if you want to be number 1, call in, tune in the website, and let's have a little competition there because we don't want to be second to Brutus. So it's really great to see that happening. We have a new app. Apple has accepted our application for distribution, and it will be available to roll out our new website very soon. There's been a discussion about a plaque to commemorate the new State Frank Chambers Stadium in renovations. Right now there's some language that needs to be edited a bit and shortened, but I know it's long overdue. Even though it says Frank H. Chambers in big letters, we still didn't put a plaque on there that tells us a little more about where that edifice originated, and we all know it came from Willis Adams High School or junior high school, so middle school. So we want to be sure that that's duly noted on that facade. And again, I did mention about the tribute to the Miles Estate, and we're just really excited about that. It's the last item I had. If you have any ideas to make that bigger, better, and a great tribute, do that. We're going to be using that room, 125 in the intermediate school, as a tribute to him, but also as a conference room. So when you go in for a conference or a meeting in there, you'll have a lot to look at and a lot to think about. And I absolutely, if anybody knows me, I immerse myself in history. So it's fun for me to dig out all the things that we'd like to display. So if you have something that you think will be extremely appropriate, although space will be limited, but do let us know. We'd love to have it. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you. I'm glad I was able to use my microphone.
I was in the middle of a yawn, sorry. It's not you, it's me. I was yawning. It's not you.
Johnny.
It's not you, it's me. So curriculum committee met last week, and a couple things on the math focus that have been done at all of the buildings. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details because there's a lot of numbers, a lot of great things shared with us by all of the principals. But I think overall, it was a lot of work put in for the couple of weeks that we had students coming in the building and getting extra support during the day for math. But what all of the different administrators shared was that those couple of weeks are making a difference. We're seeing improvement with all of the age groups and scores for the young people for math, so that's really great. As far as materials for our math series, do you have those picked up? I know last week you said they were ready for pickup. We might have them next week, and the good news about that is that those will be able to be in the hands of our teachers before summer, so that gives them as much time as we can give them to prepare for next year. We have also looks like decided that for curriculum adoption we are going to be focusing on science for next year now that we've got math behind us. The different buildings are working on their summer remediation plans. It looks a little bit differently at each building depending on the ages and the schedules and what teachers we have available, but that is in the works. We will be offering that at all of our buildings. Some more information to come on that for families who might be interested in that. What else am I missing, Anne?
I think that's it.
I think we're
That's a great
good.
meeting.
And Battle of the Books is this Friday, so really excited to see how that goes.
Thank you very much. Alan, do you have anything on finance?
Yeah, Finance Committee met last week, and I want to thank everyone on behalf of the board for voting, as we now have funding clarity as we move forward. And the funding clarity is through 2028, as you saw on the 5-year forecast. So we now have projected revenues that exceed our expenses, which really helps us from a planning point of view as the Finance Committee, because it's not good when you have negative balances going forward. So again, thanks for everyone who voted, because it was very important to get that clarity. We looked at some of our costs as we move forward. We looked at supplemental contract costs, insurance costs, administrative salary schedules, and staff salary schedules as we move forward. And we talked a little bit about forecasting where are we going to go in the future? What does our school system really look like? And we need some guidance from the school board as to where we're going to go in the future, and look at some of our costs. We need to also understand we set aside money every year for certain capital expenditures. The question is, are we setting aside enough money, as we're now looking at inflation and additional costs for those future services? So that's one thing that we're going to look at in the future. The other item that we looked at from a revenue generating point of view, we talked a little bit about the scoreboard and the advertising opportunities we have on the school board. So we're going to ask the administration to take a look at how can we better leverage that from a revenue standpoint as we move forward. So basically that's what we talked about, and Ruth Ann was with me. I don't know, did I cover everything okay, Ruth Ann? So that was the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Ann, anything on insurance? She tricked you.
I really do.
She turned my mic off. So we have a meeting coming up May 11th, and Cheryl has provided us an updated spreadsheet as well. So we'll be discussing that in the next meeting.
Okay. Policy's got date to be determined. Same with the strategic planning, economic development, and then on to technology. Any updates there, Alan?
Yeah, we also had a technology meeting, and on the agenda for tonight, you see that we have a motion to approve the purchase of 300 ACER units for this year, and that's the ongoing replenishment system that we have, so we can say 1-to-1. So we appreciate the board's support in approving that purchase. These computers actually cost significantly less than what we purchased them for last year. I think it's close to $80 or $90 less per unit from the peak of where we were at last year. The other good thing is I want to thank, on behalf of the board again, all the efforts that our staff has made and our students and the parents of these students to teach them to take good care of our computers, our 1-to-1 computers, or Chromebooks, or whatever you want to call them. We have very little damage that's occurring. And the fees that we've actually generated from what we charge the students each year amount to about $34,000 that we can apply to the purchase of these Chromebooks, these 300 Chromebooks, which is about half the cost. So half the cost is being covered by good care of the existing Chromebooks that we have and the fee structure that we've implemented to try to cover the damage that we may incur in the future. The other thing that we talked about is you're going to see that there's going to be a teacher laptop replenish plan that's going forward. We also are looking at specialty laptops for the media and arts and engineering. We're looking at some grant funding for those computers. So that's kind of the computer side of everything. And then as far as the infrastructure goes, we've approved DataServe again to continue with support, and they've been doing an excellent job supporting us from a technology standpoint. And we're looking at, you'll see a proposal later, probably early summer, for the addition of some more Chromebook boards. I think the technology committee is recommending that we would purchase 12, and they cost around $2,500 each. What's happening, what we're currently doing is we're slowly replacing the projectors. Okay, and Amanda was there with me, so she understands all that I'm talking about. So if I misspeak, Amanda, you need to speak up. But the Cuomo boards, we're in the process of replacing the projectors with that. And what we've been doing is the projectors that come out of service, we save them. And when one goes down, we are able to replace them. And this goes beyond just replacing the bulbs. This is when the hardware that actually drives the unit goes down. So currently we have 3 in storage. So if something goes down, we can immediately replace them. We have in our budget, we have the budget to cover the cost for that if the board should approve it. And we had a little bit of a problem last year rolling out the Cuomo boards, as the Cuomo boards are app-based instead of computer-based systems. So to alleviate that, what we're going to do is this year when we implement the Cuomo boards, we're actually going to put a computer with it. So the teacher has the option of either using the apps or using the computer the way they do on the projectors. Yeah. I'll remember what they're called. And we had 2 people volunteer to try to help in that rollout. And that was James from DataServe and then Kevin Hickman, who's a 7th grade science teacher. He's very familiar with the Cuomo board use and very familiar with switching between the computer and the app-based system. So I thought that was very positive. We had a couple people come forward to try to help support beyond what training we get initially with the Cuomo boards. So that's basically where we were at.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions for any other of the committees? Go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
Resolution 23-05-067 is consent agenda.
Can we get a motion?
So moved.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Can I go through the items?
Yep.
Okay. So some of these are just kind of matter of fact. So we have unpaid leave. We don't put the reason down under B. We already covered C under previously recognized or previously approved retiring staff. We have a resignation section there. Treasurer's report, which I know the board's already seen. 5-year forecast was reviewed tonight, but this is the formal. Just as a reminder, this is your May that you're adopting now, which obviously we can do after last week's vote. Well, you could do it either way, but it certainly looks a lot better. Permanent appropriations, which Kim applies to the board. You have your board meeting minutes. So we have April 10th and April 24th there. Next, we go into some contracts. So you have Licking Memorial Hospital nursing contract, and this is a one-year contract. We have good service right now with Licking Memorial Hospital and the nurses, so this would extend for one more year. Ohio Health, we have had athletic training services with Ohio Health for years, and what we're recommending is we just roll that for one more year forward. Four Seasons is our next contract, and they help us with HVAC controls. We're recommending a one-year contract in that, and we talked about that. Buildings grounds are another meeting, and we're going to take that out to bid next year as well too. I just think it's time for us to look at some of this. L is the purchase of technology, and Mr. Benton already covered that. M is school calendars, and I know the board has seen some of this before, but just as a reminder, this would amend this coming school calendar to 23-24, and then the following year, 24-25. The board's already adopted 25-26. And the only changes to next year and the following year, there's just two changes. One would move us from quarters to trimesters in grades K through 5, which is what the 25-26 calendar already contains. And then it's also moving the conference dates a little bit, so a little smoother. And we'll note that to parents, but otherwise there's no substantial changes to those. Administrative employment, we have multiple people there, and I'm going to call your attention to the TBD, which we changed already, so that would be Derek Busenberg, Director of Operations. I should put a 2-year contract. Is that, we can talk about that, is okay? So we'll do 24, fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 26. Certified employment, we have a long list of staff there. I won't read them all. Classified employment, also a equally long list there, which I won't read all those, so you can see those as they're identified. We have Kyle Higgins here, who's the basketball boys varsity head coach. And Kyle, at the end, when I'm done reading this section, Robbie can touch it. Maybe you can just talk for a few minutes to the board. I'm sure I'd like to get to know you. We're very proud of all of our extracurriculars, and certainly basketball fits into that. So when we're done here, maybe you can just say a couple of things for the board votes. The next section is on ELL tutor, which are English language tutor for the upcoming school year. District substitutes, want to really thank the administrative team because they've been creative. As you know, every school district, certainly in Ohio and primarily nationwide is struggling with substitutes. So we were able to get some upcoming teachers and some other staff who have worked with us. So we have them listed as substitutes on that list. And that is it for consent. If there's, let me know if there's any questions.
Any questions for anyone?
I do have a question. The meeting agenda, April 10th, on page 6, 23-04-0598, has that I voted, I abstained.
Oh.
That was the one where Alan
Yeah,
was
so you didn't
my
have a
husband.
conflict of interest.
Yes,
We'll correct that.
And that
Thank
was
you.
on the April 10th?
April
Okay,
10th.
yeah,
Mhm.
we'll make sure, thank you. We'll make sure to,
But the others were correct.
thank you. We'll make sure to clean that up. And then, any other questions with consent? I know you've seen a lot of this and we worked through committees. Can we have Kyle just introduce himself, a little bit of background about boys basketball? Is that okay?
Yeah, excellent.
Kyle, they've all seen your resume and just a little bit of information, but it'd be good to just go through your professional background if you could, and specifically coaching and what attracts you to Johnstown-Monroe and what you expect to do with our boys basketball program. Yeah. Any questions from the board members?
Do we run an up-tempo style of offense or no?
Any questions? Thank you. We appreciate it. And I want to thank our interview. I want to thank our interview team. Mr. Brickner helped, and certainly Mr. Busenberg was keeping me updated. Very strategic interview process. The candidate pool was very deep, and I know the committee spent a lot of time. We had a paper screening, then we had an initial face-to-face screening, then there was some stratified or systematic rounds of interviews, and then they culminated with actually working with students. We had 3 finalists, and again, it was a very tight race, if you want to look at it that way, and I just think that we're very strategic, and we appreciate everyone who participated.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Welcome aboard. Well, in a minute after we.
We'll be at the
Maybe.
games.
We have to vote.
Yeah, perhaps.
All right. Anything else on that?
No, I think that's it for consent unless there's other questions or introduction.
Call the board?
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Now welcome aboard.
And we'll be at the games.
All right, on to 7.
There are 2 items here. The first is recognition of donations. These are both for the educators scholarship that they do annually to give to a graduating senior.
Can I get a motion?
A motion?
Can I get a second? Any comments? Obviously, thank you to the donations. Call the roll?
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other item is to authorize the treasurer to publish notice for reemployment consideration for Jacqueline Cannon, elementary building secretary. We have considered hiring Mrs. Cannon back into her position as a retired rehiree. And as such, there are certain legal things that we need to do to get her into that position. So this is the first step in that process.
So moved.
Second?
Third.
4th. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Dave, or Mrs. Boer, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Back to you.
Okay. Resolution 23-05-070 are our 2023 graduates for Johnstown High School. You have a comprehensive list there. I won't read all the names. And we're still working with a few students to make sure they meet graduation. So I'm asking you to approve this tonight, and then we have a little leeway if there's making sure we get everyone across the line.
Can I get a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Discussion?
131 graduates.
131.
Is that what you got?
Yep.
Did you just count?
131 plus 1, or is it 130 plus 1?
131 with
Counting
Urban.
Mr. Hartsock. Okay.
Which will be an exciting time.
Yes.
a great time.
Call the roll?
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-0771 is credit recovery support stipend for high school. This is something we've done in the past, and it's trying to help some students make up for credit that they're deficient in over the summer.
Can I get a motion?
A motion.
A second.
Can we just get the report out of this at the end of the summer as we do?
I was
Yep.
just going to ask that too, just to report.
Mr. Busenberg, there's a few students, there's always, in every school district has this, there's a few students who could still graduate in the summer, even though they weren't on your previous list that you approved. So we'll work with them, and then we'll keep the board updated.
Thank you. Call the roll?
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-072 is a content recovery support stipend, and this is for the middle school.
Can I get a motion?
A motion.
Second.
You'll note that we've done high school in the previous one. This is middle school. We're still working on the intermediate and elementary, so they'll be forthcoming. We don't have all the assessment data yet, so when we get that, we'll be able to analyze it, and we'll bring those back. So this is just middle school.
Any other questions? We've discussed this at several meetings. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-073 is approval of job description for math coaches, and these are the job positions we've talked about to help support the new math curriculum.
Motion, please.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any additional comments, questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-074 is a motion to untable a motion for approval of student handbooks from the last meeting we had.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-075 is approval of student handbooks.
You get a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
And I'll just give a little bit before the board votes. So we've made some changes and appreciate the board's input on that. We used part of our work session the last 2 weeks ago, so that was helpful. And wanted to note too, we have 2 more handbooks that are coming your way. So it'll be athletics and online, but those are forthcoming. But otherwise, what you've seen are the changes that we were able to make from the last work session, which I know you see copies of.
And then the administrative team will put that message out as.
Yeah, we haven't produced these yet. We were waiting for the board meeting. So once those are done, and then what we'll do is we'll highlight the families.
The changes.
Yeah, the changes. Yeah.
Any other questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-076 are approval of policies.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
These policies, they're codified by different tiers within the organization. This is just the way policy set up. So we have 1432, which is administration. 3432 is professional staff, is typically teachers, school psychs, counselors, and 4432, which are classified staff. This is now growth from the policy committee, and it actually was some discussions we've had about trying to fill substitute positions and all too. So what this allows for is standardization now among all 3 groups, which we didn't have that, so that tightens it up. And there also is a provision administratively we can accept a quarter day now, which we hadn't done in the past. We were doing half day, but with a quarter day, we sometimes can do internal filling. You can't really find quarter day subs, but it allows teachers to cover other classrooms. So I appreciate if the board would approve that, and that procedurally will help us out as we move forward.
Any other questions on this? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-077 is administrative employment, and this is for Michael Cartwright, and it's a 2-year contract. He is our food services supervisor.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Abstain.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-078 is Licking County ESC. This is the contract for early education services for children with disabilities. This is basically what we call preschool services.
I'll motion.
Can we get a second?
I'll second it.
This is just a 1-year contract.
Any other questions on this? We've discussed it. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-079 is Licking County ESC. This is for a literacy consulting contract. We've talked about this, but with the importance of where we're focused on literacy and really the science of reading and where we believe things could head, and we don't know where they're going to be at the state of Ohio, we believe it's important to have up to 10 days. And Marcy Wilson would be in that role as we've negotiated with the Licking County ESC.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-080 is an overnight field trip for our football team. It's football camp, I should say.
All motion.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 23-05-081 is overnight field trip, big red band marching camp.
That's a big mouthful. Big
Yeah,
red
I
band
know. I
marching
kind
Are you
band.
of was
stumbling over
stumbling
that?
that big red band
Marching
marching
band.
band. Yes.
Oh, I got you. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
it.
The board had asked a question at one of the meetings about what happens if there's commitments, families have vacations, students miss part and, part of band camp or even all of it for that matter, people get ill. Mr. Busenberg worked on that with Mr. Zarelli, and we were assured that if student misses, they can make it up, and really their ability to participate then is on them learning the music and then the routines as well too, and they work with them individually. So if there is an extenuating circumstance, there's no penalization, and we got a nice write-up from Mr. Zarelli about that explaining.
Any further discussion?
We should approve it before they announce it.
That's something we've talked about. Like even tonight, you saw TBDs on the agenda because we didn't want to get in front of things. Like with hiring the basketball coach, it was just from the standpoint we needed an opportunity to get back to some other applicants, and we actually want the board to give us input. So we're talking about workflow. So you'll be seeing more of that in the future, and that's something that we talked about. And I don't think it was anyone's intention to really go in a different direction, but we're going to be more methodical this way.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
All right. Any other board comments for anything? Good. On to you.
First, I want to, and Mr. Benton talked about this, but thank you for everyone's support for the levy. I can say thank you now that it won't influence the vote, because I guess we're very restricted, so I don't think I'm getting myself in trouble by saying that. But it really, Mr. Benton said it, but really for the ability for us to now look into 28, 29, and, that gives us really a lot of ability to forecast. You can see what we had in our 5-year projections, and obviously struggling there. So tremendous effort, and I thank everyone, including the community, for such a resounding passage. Branding, Mrs. Brewer covered that, so there's nothing more I need to really say on that because she covered website, the mobile app, trademarking, the Johnny. We're going to keep the Johnny, so to dispel any concerns there, but we just want to make sure it's updated a little bit. And the most important thing is we don't have a high resolution of the Johnny, so when we reproduce it, like if you look at even on some of the agendas, it pixelates. So what we're going to do is get a little bit of a modified Johnny that we expect, and then we'll have it done by an artist that actually the district will trademark, and we'll have control over the image as well too. So if it goes out there and someone's using it and it's not to our agreement, we'll have a cease and desist process that we can implement. So that's part of our rebranding. One of the things I would appreciate a little feedback on tonight from the board is I was talking with a couple of the board members, and we were talking about the importance of opening up the schools, and we've certainly been able to do a lot more this year. Grandparents' Day was one of the most recent ones, and Janet and Marcy did a great job coordinating that tremendous amount of work. But we also talked about trying to consistently get more people in the schools on a regular basis. So we talked about a school volunteer program. So that had to come up at some of the principal interviews. I'm just interested in a little feedback from the board about it. That's something we want to pursue, and we thought we would start at K3 if so.
Yep. Absolutely.
I support thoroughly. I think you can. Volunteers are a valuable part of an organization, and they'll be well trained, or we wouldn't have the program.
I mean, I know that in the past I've volunteered in schools, and it's been a wonderful pleasure. And the teachers that I've been able to volunteer for, you know how much they appreciate it, and the little bits of time you could put into their classroom help them from not having to take things home on evenings and weekends, so that they can spend time with their own families. So I think that I think there would be a huge benefit to the district and the grades to see a structured, trained volunteer program.
I support that too. I think that there's a lot of benefit to having a volunteer program. It would be structure it. I think it's definitely beneficial for the kids.
So it's something we'll work on as an administrative team, and we'll give updates to the board. I think some of it lies under the same banner of human resources, and there's been some things we've been doing in the area of personnel. So although they wouldn't be employed, there's still procedures you have to go through. So I think you'll see an outgrowth there. So I'll take that. Want to remind everyone, and rightly so, that it's Educator Appreciation Week, and I know for the board members, if you can hang back for a few minutes after the board meeting, we wanted to get a little video if you could, so we can share that with the staff. Insurance committee meeting was already talked about with Mrs. Thomas, so we'll have that meeting next week, so nothing more to say there. Wanted to also remind everyone that we're still looking at economic development, compensation agreements, so we'll get back on top of that, looking at our partners. It's not only the city of Johnstown, but we also have to look at our townships and all too. This is a constant discussion. Mr. McDonald and I, right before this meeting, we attended part of the chamber meeting, and we were there listening to the Evans Foundation and the framework, and all of this discussion coming forward. So more to come on that. And then I was going to talk about General Miles, but Mrs. Boer also covered that in her section. The only thing I would tell the board is we're still waiting, or the only add I would have is that we're still waiting for the legal decision on that, and we have no idea what that could take months. So I'll give an update as soon as that's available. And that's all I have.
All right. Do we need a motion for executive session for any reason?
So move for,
Yeah, we just have the one since we covered at the front of the meeting. So this would be consideration of the purchase of property for other purposes or sale or the rest of their.
One second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
No action.
No.
There'll be no action after executive session.
7:30.